The chamber was restless, the air thick with the leftover tension of partisan skirmishes that had become Washington's new normal. Reporters half listened, already scripting the day's outrage cycle, when Jim Jordan leaned toward the mic. His voice, usually sharp enough to cut through steel, came out calm, almost reverent. "Before we move on," he said, "I want to recognize Representative Jasmine Crockett." For a beat, no one breathed. Across the dais, Crockett's eyes lifted, cautious, uncertain whether this was set up or sincerity. The silence deepened until the faint hum of cameras filled the void. Then came the words no one expected. Her composure, her consistency, her willingness to stand firm with grace deserves acknowledgement. Every phone in the room lit up. Clips spread faster than anyone could type a caption. Was this irony, a trap, or had the fiercest partisan on the Hill just offered something purer, respect? Comment threads exploded, hashtags forming in real time. Even the news anchors stumbled over their cues. The country that had grown addicted to conflict suddenly blinked, stunned. And as Jordan's words echoed through the chamber, one question seized the feed. Why now? And what could possibly have moved him to say it? Before that unexpected tribute, America was running on fumes. Every hearing had become another arena, every headline another spark tossed into the nation's dry field of outrage. Viewers no longer tuned in to learn. They came for the spectacle, for the latest verbal takedown that could be clipped and memed by midnight. Jim Jordan was the embodiment of that era, relentless, sharp, unyielding. And Jasmine Crockett, equally unafraid, met every jab with surgical precision. Their exchanges were viral fuel, his under versus her controlled fire, his disbelief against her dignity. Clips of their past confrontations looped across timelines, his finger jabbing the air, her steady gaze refusing to flinch. "Mr. Chairman, with all due respect," she'd begin, voice measured, while millions watched from couches and phones, choosing sides before she even finished her sentence. That was the rhythm of America. Division as entertainment, fury as currency. So when Jordan's tone softened that day, it felt like the universe had skipped a beat. The usual noise fell away, replaced by a silence no one trusted at first. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Two ideological opposites sharing something that looked a lot like mutual respect. But for one fragile, luminous moment, America remembered what decency sounded like. Commentators paused. Citizens shared the clip not for outrage, but for relief. For the first time in years, people weren't laughing, shouting, or scrolling. They were listening. And as that silence spread across screens and living rooms, it felt less like a headline and more like a heartbeat, an unspoken hope that maybe, just maybe, something in the country's spirit could still be healed. But to understand how such a moment was even possible, we have to go back to the man who once swore he'd never been. Long before the applause, Jim Jordan's name was shorthand for confrontation. In hearing rooms that echoed, long before the applause, Jim Jordan's name was shorthand for confrontation. In hearing rooms that echoed with accusation, he was the spark that never went out. A man who thrived on tension, who believed truth was something you fought for, not negotiated. Cameras loved him because he never hesitated. His voice could slice through layered arguments like a whistle at a wrestling match, sharp and decisive. Headlines crowned him the attack dog of the GOP, and he wore it like armor. Every committee room became a mat, every opponent an adversary to be pinned by persistence. Yet behind the sound bites, there was a rhythm to him, a discipline born in the sweaty silence of high school gyms. the wrestler who rose before dawn, who learned that victory came from endurance, not luck. He carried that ethic into politics. Push harder, yield to no one, trust your training. To his allies, he was loyalty embodied. To his critics, he was immovable, incapable of reflection. Both were right. Still, there were cracks invisible to the cameras. Staffers whispered about his quiet moments after hearings, staring at notes long after everyone else had left, fingers tapping the table like a man trying to find a different beat. Sometimes conviction becomes a cage, and the bars are made of certainty. Jordan's world rewarded aggression, not introspection, and somewhere along the way, the man who once fought for fairness learned to equate volume with strength. That's why his tribute to Jasmine Crockett hit like thunder out of a clear sky. It wasn't just that he praised her, it was that he did it. The unflinching partisan, the man who'd built the legacy on never yielding, had suddenly shown vulnerability. For a nation that knew him only in black and white, this flicker of gray was almost disorienting. But every transformation begins with a fracture, and for Jim Jordan, that fracture had been forming long before anyone noticed. The question now wasn't whether he changed, but what, or who, had made him start to. Before she ever faced down a congressman, Jasmine Crockett was standing in a cramped Dallas courtroom defending clients no one else wanted to touch. Her suit was secondhand, her caseload endless, but her voice never trembled. Every sentence carried the weight of someone who had lived too close to injustice to ever look away again. She wasn't just arguing the law, she was translating the pain of the overlooked into language the system couldn't ignore. Those early years shaped her rhythm, sharp when she needed to be, but rooted in a grace that came from knowing exactly who she was. When she entered Congress, the microphones multiplied, but her message didn't change. She carried the cadence of the community with her, the single mothers, the hustling students, the elders who told her, "Don't let them silence you." She spoke with conviction, not performance, though every hearing seemed designed to test her composure. There were moments when colleagues tried to rattle her, cutting her off mid-sentence or twisting her words. Each time she paused, smiled, and reloaded. Her viral one-liners, "If facts make you uncomfortable, that's not my fault," weren't just clapbacks. They were shields of dignity in an arena built to humiliate. Social media adored her not because she was flashy, but because she was real. Viewers saw someone who refused to shrink, who treated decorum as a tool, not a muzzle. Her confidence didn't come from ego, it came from empathy. She knew what it felt like to be underestimated, spoken over, dismissed, and she had vowed long ago that if she ever had a microphone, she'd use it to amplify those still waiting to be heard. In every debate, you could see her strategy. Let the storm rage, then answer with stillness. Let the noise expose itself, then speak with precision. She understood that restraint could be revolutionary, that calm could be its own form of protest. So when Jim Jordan, of all people, stood up to praise her, the irony wasn't lost on anyone who'd followed her journey. The woman who had been patronized, interrupted, and caricatured as too bold was now being recognized by one of her loudest ideological opponents. But this moment wasn't validation. It was revelation, because Jasmine Crockett had never needed permission to be respected. She had already earned it. The tribute only magnified what her supporters already knew, that integrity, when held long enough, bends even the fiercest resistance. And yet, for all her steadiness, even she couldn't have anticipated what was coming next, how quickly admiration could turn the temperature in a room, how one sentence could change the pulse of a nation hungry for grace. The hearing room that day felt like an old battlefield haunted by echoes of past clashes. Every chair, every microphone seemed to remember the sting of their last confrontation. Staffers whispered, journalists leaned forward, waiting for the familiar sparks. Jim Jordan shuffled his papers, expression unreadable, while Jasmine Crockett sat poised, hand resting lightly between her fingers. The tension was electric. Expectation, suspicion, fatigue, all pulsing under the hum of fluorescent lights. When Jordan finally leaned into the mic, the air shifted. His tone, usually sharp as flint, came out low, almost hesitant. "We've disagreed plenty," he began, and a few heads turned, bracing for the usual onslaught. "But disagreement doesn't raise respect." A hush rippled through the room. Crockett didn't move, but her eyes narrowed slightly, searching for the catch, the trap hidden between his words. He continued, measured now, each syllable stripped of its old aggression. "In these hearings, she's shown composure under pressure that I frankly admire. Whether we're on the same side or not, that deserves acknowledgement." The words landed like a dropped glass, quiet, then shattering everything. A single camera flash punctured the stillness, followed by another. Even the reporter stopped typing. Jasmine inclined her head, not smiling, not believing it yet. Across the chamber, murmurs spread, uncertain, disoriented. It felt as if the ghosts of every past argument had been exorcised in one sentence. For the first time, the space that had known only combat carried something else: sincerity. Jordan's voice trailed off, and in that silence something rare lingered, an uneasy peace. It wasn't friendship, not yet. It was recognition. And as the quiet thickened, the world outside that room began to lean closer, waiting to see if this fragile calm would hold, or if the next words would shatter it all over again.
Jim Jordan shifted slightly in his seat, gripping the edges of the podium as though it could anchor him against the weight of the moment. His usual armor, the fierce confidence, the quick retorts, the polished outrage was absent. For a heartbeat, he seemed almost unsure, a man who had spent decades defining himself by conflict, suddenly exposed to something entirely new. "I've watched these proceedings," he began, voice low, deliberate, "and I've seen a lot of fire, a lot of shouting, a lot of—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Frustration. But I've also seen something rare." The chamber leaned in, collectively holding its breath, each person aware that whatever came next would either shatter expectations or confirm them. Then he said it, the words everyone thought impossible coming from a man synonymous with relentless partisan combat. Representative Jasmine Crockett is one of the toughest but most genuine members of this chamber. She conducts herself with a professionalism and a fairness that I, frankly, respect. Her poise under pressure, her commitment to her constituents, her integrity, these are things worth recognizing. The pause that followed wasn't uncomfortable, it was seismic. Time seemed to stretch. Crockett's eyes widened, disbelief flickering there before giving way to a cautious warmth, the corner of her mouth lifting ever so slightly as though testing reality. A ripple traveled through the room. Colleagues who had long anticipated a fiery exchange froze, unsure whether to clap, whisper, or do nothing at all. And then it happened. A single hesitant hand lifted, followed by another, until the chamber erupted in applause, a slow crescendo that built into a wave of affirmation. Reporters scrambled, cameras pivoted, and social media lit up like a live wire. Hashtags surged, hashtag respect across the aisle, hashtag finally some decency, hashtag mic drop moment. Clips went viral within seconds, split-screen reactions showing anchor faces caught between awe and disbelief, pundits struggling to narrate the human moment in a landscape usually dominated by outrage. In comment threads, citizens typed furiously, some with tears in their eyes. "Didn't think I'd see this in my lifetime. This is what courage looks like. Maybe civility isn't dead after all. Ordinary viewers, long disenchanted with the endless theater of political warfare, pause to witness a rare human truth. Recognition, acknowledgement, and respect can coexist with ideological difference. Jordan's gaze met Crockett's one final time, steady, sincere. No fanfare, no theatrics, just acknowledgement. It was enough. For a moment the room held its breath. The outside world leaned in, and the collective imagination of a weary nation was stirred. One sentence, one moment, had sent shockwaves far beyond the chamber walls, leaving the question lingering. If civility could emerge here, in the most unlikely of places, what might happen next?
Within hours, the tribute had escaped the chamber, carried by every screen, every feed, every notification pinging across the globe. Hashtag Respect Across the Aisle surged upward, trending on platforms that had long been battlegrounds of outrage. Ordinary citizens posted clips with captions that trembled between disbelief and hope. "I didn't think I'd see decency in D.C. again. This gives me faith in humanity." Finally, someone said what needed to be said. Emojis of hands clapping, hearts, and teary faces flooded the streams, an unspoken testament to a nation starving for civility. Late-night hosts paused their usual monologues, replaying the moment in slow motion, dissecting it with a mix of awe and incredulity. Influencers stitched the clips into viral reels, adding captions like "When Integrity Wins" and "Mic Drop of the Century." Cable news ran split screens, showing Jordan's measured words alongside Crockett's subtle, stunned smile, and the commentators wrestled with the unanticipated admiration. Was this genuine, one analyst asked, or a calculated performance, another counted? The debate was fierce, yet underneath it all, a rare consensus emerged. It felt real. Even critics, hardened by years of zero-sum politics, conceded the impact. Political pundits, usually quick to deride every gesture, admitted that for the first time in memory, the chamber had offered a breath of bipartisan air. Tweets and posts echoed through thousands of timelines. "This is what leadership looks like. Maybe civility isn't dead. If they can do it, so can we." The moment became a lens through which Americans could envision a different kind of dialogue, one where disagreements didn't have to dissolve into mockery or malice. Across comment sections, ordinary citizens debated the significance. Some were skeptical, arguing it was political theater, a performance designed to pacify the weary public. Yet juxtaposed with the authentic reactions of Crockett and the subtle vulnerability Jordan had displayed, the skepticism softened. The narrative wasn't about strategy. It was about the human instinct to recognize merit, even in someone on the opposite side of the aisle. The moment rippled outward, leaving a trail of reflection in its wake. School teachers shared the clip with students as a civics lesson. Families debated it at dinner tables, and social media feuds that had once been arenas of fury became spaces for cautious celebration. For a few hours at least, the nation paused united not by politics, but something far rarer: recognition, respect, and the quiet possibility that even in a divided landscape, common ground could still be found. And yet, for all the praise and viral attention, the question lingered. Had the chamber witnessed a fleeting anomaly, or the beginning of something far more profound? Days after the tribute, Jordan stepped before the cameras, the usual bravado softened by a rare introspection. "We spent so much time tearing each other down," he said, voice measured, "that we forget what it means to recognize courage when we see it. Representative Crockett reminded me of that." His words weren't rehearsed lines, they were a confession, a glimpse behind the armor of a man long defined by confrontation. He spoke of fatigue, of endless shouting matches that accomplished little, and of the quiet inspiration he felt witnessing Crockett's steadiness, her unwavering commitment to truth and fairness. Crockett responded with equal grace, addressing the nation not with triumph, but with clarity. "We don't have to agree to be decent," she said. And in that simple sentence, she reframed the debate. It wasn't about politics or winning. It was about humanity. Across screens and feeds, the sentiment resonated, a balm in a landscape long accustomed to conflict. Teachers shared the clip in classrooms, showing students that integrity and respect were lessons far more enduring than partisan points. Parents played it for children, narrating the power of acknowledgement over attack, of empathy over ego. Ordinary people quoted the exchange, shared it in group chats, and wrote posts that rippled with hope. Maybe civility isn't extinct. This is what leadership looks like. We can do better, and we must. The moment became more than a viral headline. It became a cultural mirror. One act of recognition had sparked reflection, debate, and aspiration simultaneously. Humility, respect, and grace, values too often overlooked, were suddenly center stage. And in that montage of ordinary voices, classrooms, and dinner tables, the emotional crescendo became clear. One moment of humanity can reset an entire culture. For a nation exhausted by division, the lesson was undeniable. Respect doesn't weaken conviction. Acknowledging dignity doesn't diminish principle. And in that quiet collision of courage and civility, America glimpsed the possibility that politics could serve something larger than itself, the shared humanity that binds us all. Even as the cameras turned off and the hashtags faded, the echo remained. Sometimes a single act of recognition is enough to remind an entire country who it wants to be. Jim Jordan praises Jasmine Crockett's character. His tribute touches millions. That headline barely captures the weight of the moment, the quiet shock that rippled through chambers, living rooms, and timelines alike. The story wasn't about victory or defeat. It was about recognition. In a divided world, two voices found a moment of mutual respect, and millions felt seen. For a fleeting heartbeat, the noise of partisanship fell away, replaced by something rarer: acknowledgement, dignity, and the courage to honor what is right, even across lines long drawn. This isn't just a story to watch once. Share it. Keep the dialogue alive. Because when dignity leads, division loses. When recognition becomes contagious, it has the power to transform not just politics, but a culture. And if one moment can shift hearts, imagine what happens when millions join in.